like, I don't know if you guys know something, but like a lot of the Frankfurt School stuff that even still Republicans use now, I don't know if you guys know this, but like the entirety of the Marxist movement, whether it was Lenin or Marxist-Leninism or any kind of like Marxism, any kind of deviation away from like capitalism at the time, was declared Jewish pervertry. Sick takes on this Face the Nation interview, by the way.
Before a possible government shutdown unless Congress strikes an 11th hour deal to fund it. We'll get to that in a moment, but we begin with New York Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on the expanding auto workers strike. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
This strike now in 20 states. I know you are headed to Missouri later to strike outside a GM facility. The president goes to Michigan Tuesday. He only announced that after Donald Trump said he was going to UAW strike. Do you think injecting this high level of presidential politics complicates getting a settlement?
Well, I think right
now. What? Like right out, she had that in the chamber, dude. She came in hot with that. Why don't you share your thoughts and opinions on the matter? If anything political, instead of talking the safest route of opinions that everyone says, why not say that you're on China's side if you can comfortable say that America deserves 9/11? What? That doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, I have like a black and white perspective or something. No, Jews are coming here because XU was spewing dog shit politics for 10 minutes straight. Oh. Makes sense.
Now we are in such a crisis in our economy, a crisis of inequality, that it is going to take a level of political and popular support, unlike that we've seen in.
Yeah, I don't know, especially as it pertains to foreign policy. I don't know if I've ever taken the safe route. You know what I mean? Like, what is the safe route for foreign policy? The safe route for foreign policy would be to say, China sucks, China is bad. I don't care if they've actually done any development whatsoever. The only development that China has ever done, they've done to, like, you know, make a better racism factory where they just, like, kill everybody in the racism factory. Lower the volume a little bit.
In a strike situation like this, in recent and modern history, in order for
I'm genuinely curious. When you got confronted by Ethan about socialism, you said something about re-education, when back then you said the kill them all. Elaborate. He's doing the meme. The I'm genuinely curious meme. Oh my God. I love you, chatter. Don't change. He's just in here just asking questions. He's just curious. That's why he came in here and said that my interest is to kill every single person that doesn't agree with me. Surely that must be my genuine political position. Does that make you feel more confident in your side? Like, does that make you feel a little bit better when you're like, oh, if I say some idiotic shit like this, like, then my side is correct? Because if that's the depths you need to reach to in order to fucking try to act like this is my position, like just my genuine position. Oh, cake streaming thing? Okay. Remember that 9-month viewer to hater timeline? No, it's not like a viewer to hater timeline. This is not like a person who is like in here for the same reason that you're in here. A lot of people are not very charitable in their assessment. But more importantly, they're not interested in charitability. They're interested in getting something else out of it. Oftentimes drama. Let's get back to AOC and Bob Menendez. And for people wondering what my position is, if you're genuinely wondering, no, I don't think that we should murder people who are not interested in communism. But it is a perfect demonstration as to why I hate the culture surrounding debates, because like you can have a 3-hour conversation with Ethan and it's like very amicable and both parties get good takeaways from it. And yet for some reason the only important parts that people seemingly keep pumping is just like something completely clipped out of context. To be like, Hasan is interested in mass incarceration and re-education camps. That's what he wants to do. He wants to like incarcerate you and re-educate you at gunpoint and like kill you in the process or whatever the fuck. And it's like, that's not what I said. I said education plays a incredibly important role in developing social cohesion, and it's a necessity, and it works right now under a capitalist organization of the economy, and it would work in a similar capacity under a socialist formation. The example I will use is this. Imagine if our public schooling system was better about educating people on what actually happened during slavery, for example. Think about it like that. Instead of what Florida is doing right now, they did the opposite. Okay? That would be re-education. But you would be on board with that if you are genuinely a libtard. Let's get back to AOC as I seek to re-educate some of you dumb motherfuckers. You call them libtards and everything you said prior to is void. That's how they see it. But they are libtards. You know? I prefer to be called a core dem. Yeah.
For us to get a breakthrough. What we've seen at the big three are CEOs giving themselves as much as a 40% wage and compensation increase, while workers have actually seen a real wage decrease over the last 10 to 15 years. And in order for us to break that norm, I think it's going to take an unprecedented level of involvement to make sure that workers get what they deserve here.
UAW's president, when he was with us last week, said, when I asked him why the union hadn't yet endorsed President Biden, he said that has to be earned. Mm-hmm. That sounds like he's disappointed that party leadership is not doing as much as they could.
Yeah,
Do
I
you
wonder
agree
why.
with that?
Well, I think it always has to be earned. And President Biden showing up to the picket line on Tuesday is a historic event. We have never seen in modern history a president show up to a picket line like this. And I think it should be earned. It needs to be earned. And I believe that President Biden is working towards that, especially when he lands in Michigan on Tuesday to earn that.
You know, one of the things that's happening in the auto industry, as you know, is this...
I love everybody that says like AOC's so cringe or whatever, and then they turn around and ride Bernie Sanders' dick when like, what are they saying that's different? The only difference is like AOC is new in comparison to Bernie, who's like given his entire fucking life to this. Like, she's very good at communicating in a sea of like really awful Red Scare propaganda laden counters, okay? Really good. She cuts through it and she does a really good job with it. I think, you know, are there things that I criticize AOC for? Yes, absolutely. Specifically on matters that pertain to like Israel, for example. But overall, I think a lot of people just like lose their minds over AOC because we're stupid. We love yelling at our own or someone who is ostensibly on our side. Okay? That's it. You're just saying the standard Dem shit here? Yeah, really? You think it's the standard Democratic position to fucking stop causing harm in Venezuela and no longer have embargoes on Venezuelan oil? You think the Democratic Party is actually saying that? You think the Democratic Party is talking about fucking like, I don't know, the coup d'etat and the coup in Chile? Really? Like, you think these are if you think these are genuinely standard Democratic Party talking points, like you could say she's just saying those with the full-blown knowledge that it'll never happen. Okay? But ultimately, like, there's a lot of shit that she says every now and then that is pretty good. It's not everything. You know? Her foreign policy, in my opinion, similar to Bernie Sanders, is unfortunately very much imperial core. And yet, especially as it pertains to Latin American issues, she oftentimes is a very good, she has a very good take on a lot of that stuff.
Market shift and transition to electric vehicles. You were quoted back in July saying you look forward to buying a union-made electric vehicle, but you currently have a Tesla. UAW already makes some electric vehicles. So
Yes.
why wasn't that? Is it a problem with the quality? Is it a problem with the style? Is the market just not there?
No, our car was purchased during the pandemic when before a vaccine had come out. So travel between New York and Washington, the safest way that we had determined was an EV, but that was prior to some of the new models coming out on the market that had the range available. But we're actually looking into trading in our car now. So we're looking into it, and hopefully we will soon.
Elon Musk, who has a majority share in
Yeah, that was the silliest thing she's done, too, is buy a fucking Tesla.
Tesla, has said a lot of things against the unions. And a lot of these electric vehicle battery manufacturing plants as well are
She's not an Elon fan.
not unionized. So there's tension here.
Yes. Yeah, and it's something that I have been speaking with President Fain about, because one thing that we're all on the same page about is that we do not want the transition
To be honest, she buying Tesla major points laws. Yeah, that's definitely crazy.
from a fossil fuel economy to an electric economy to represent an erosion in the unionization and rights of workers.
You were quoted in the New York Times in August as saying immigration is arguably this administration's weakest issue. What did you mean?
Well, you know, I think the politics around immigration in the United States is, to no surprise to many people, one of the most contentious issues. We saw this dramatically inflamed under President Trump, but it remains to be a very controversial and contentious issue. And that makes, I believe, enacting some of the policy changes necessary much more complicated and difficult. Now, this week, after...
Bro, for the record, this interview is contentious. If you haven't noticed that, I don't know what to tell you. And this interview would never be as contentious if she was a standard Dem. Okay? That's it. If she was a standard corporate Democrat, yeah, I got something stuck in my fucking throat like a piece of cucumber. That's why I sounded like that. If she was a core Dem, okay? She literally say, you got a Tesla. You fucking kidding me? Do they ever ask? Would they ever ask Joe Manchin why he has a Maserati? You know what I mean? They're like, wow, you claim to fucking care about like American manufacturing. Why do you drive a Maserati? Which he does, by the way. Which is like the shittiest like luxury car you get. At least get a fucking Lexus, idiot. Anyway, they would never ask that. That would never be a fucking point of contention. You know what I mean? It's just very stupid. Dude said get a Lexus? Yes, I did. Maserati is the actual shittiest fucking like I'm broke but I want a luxury car you could buy. It's worse than BMWs with their fucking constant problems. Lexus is Toyota. Get a fucking Toyota. Get a Lexus. Better than an American? I mean, listen, I love the UAW, but if we're gonna keep it a $150, I mean, all I'm saying is they should be paid well. And honestly, off of what the car sells, regardless of the qualities. And if we're talking about, and it's not like the UAW designs the fucking cars. And also, if we're talking about like you know, American manufacturing, like there are plenty of American cars that are better than some American cars. Yes, I would say the big three is better than Tesla by wide margins, 100%. Two countries with robust labor protections, surprisingly, and a very unique culture surrounding jobs and job retention, Japan, are also the two fucking countries that make the best cars, Japan and Germany. Straight up. I'll say it. Volkswagen is sick. Okay? I feel like Volkswagen is like Germany's version of making cool cars that are also like almost as durable as Japanese cars. Not as Japan is still number one. Okay? Oh my God, I just realized both of the fucking Axis powers are so goated at making cars. What the fuck? I didn't even realize that it was... when I was saying it, I was not even thinking about it. Like, actually, unironically. And the third one is Italy, like, for the fancy shit? What the fuck? What? What the fuck? Dude! Wait, what? Okay, yeah, this is turning into like one of those armchair urbanist communities where we're like, cars are fascist. Every car is manufactured by fascists and fascist ideologues. Okay, Henry Ford? Anyone? Henry Ford, anybody? You know what he believed? I mean, he basically was not that far off from fucking Hitler in his own life. Yeah, it means if you like cars, you like fascism. That's what you like. I will bike everywhere. The highway system is inspired by the Nazi autopilot. I know. All right. We're moving on from like the dumb shit that people are saying in the chat to the top of the hour ad break, which is not dumb. If you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe. No.
Perhaps almost a year of pushing from both the Congressional Hispanic Caucus to the New York delegation in Congress. We pushed to make sure that the Biden administration extended temporary protective status, otherwise known as TPS, for Venezuelans, which will allow and open the pathway for Venezuelan migrants to actually begin working and supporting themselves, which will reduce the strain on our public systems, particularly New York's shelter system and more.
That's for 500,000 Venezuelans, but only if they came here before July.
Yes.
So does Congress need to do something like the HIRE Act that one of our guests, Tony Gonzalez, has put forward, or others, to put that into law so it's not just a one-off?
Well, I definitely think that we...
Damn, bro. Did Frank ban Athletic from wearing hijab? Yeah, France has laïcité, and they regularly weaponize it against Muslims. So this is not surprising. I don't know anything about it, but maybe we'll look into it later. Oh yeah, they are very they're very aggro against Muslims. They're very aggro against Jews too. It's another one of those situations where it's like the don't say gay policy in Florida, right? Don't say gay in Florida is like, oh, you can't fucking show that you're not heteronormative, but usually the heteronormativity is not ever going to get punished. Being gay in public immediately means you're actually showcasing that you're having gay sex. It's hypersexualized. But if you are straight in public with your wife or your girlfriend or whatever, well, then that's normal. It's just like, look at those beautiful couples. It comes from being in the margins. A lot of people, a lot of governments can utilize like a broad sweeping anti-religious attire thing, right? Like France can say, oh, no, we are actually going to do this against all kinds of religions. It's not just Islam, and it's not just about the Jew. It's also Christians too, but then like no one gets punished for Christianity, so then it's like, It turns into specifically like an anti-Muslim one. And I'm saying anti-Jewish as well because like, yeah, there's a lot of anti-Semitism too. and oftentimes will even impact Jewish people as well. It just seemingly always never ends up harming religious expression on the Christian side. I love how even leftists sometimes fetishize this French concept of laïcité like as an untouchable liberal French ideal that doesn't need to be examined in the modern context of Islamophobia. Yeah, that person is a Kurdish person living in Iraq. I don't think that person was like defending or supporting laïcité. It's like current expression. You know what I mean? I think they're just like genuinely confused or worried. Just like they were worried when there were 5,000 American troops deployed to Iraq. Secularization is a massive pillar of European society, though. There are typically plenty of rules and regulations with regards to secularization, which affect all faiths. Yeah, the thing that I am frustrated by is that, like, I understand why. I get the necessity for, like, I'm Turkish, guys, okay? And not only am I Turkish, but I'm, like, what Turks would consider to be a more modern Turk. You know what I mean? A agent of the West. LGBTçi, is what Erdogan would call me. So, obviously, I have a more complex assessment of laïcité. Now, having said that, I do think that it is ironically what liberal, Western-focused, liberal, capitalist societies that end up doing similar things to what the USSR did, for example, with its stringent control over religious freedoms. It's very stupid to go after religion. I never do it. I tell you all the time. For me, the buck stops at you using your religion to oppress other people and to take away their civil liberties. Anything beyond that, if you want to have a fucking religious expression, if you want to like do your own religious thing in your own comfort of your own home or whatever, or if you want to wear a hijab, like why the fuck? It's not up to me. You know, I don't give a shit. Do your thing, you know? It's so stupid. And not only is it stupid, but if you remember, Hakim and I had this conversation on the Deprogram podcast. Hakim, he's from Iraq, is a doctor in Iraq and also a obvious socialist. And he brought up something very interesting where he basically said, like, the USSR's religious oppression was actually a major mistake because, like, my father, living under the banner, would literally fucking, like, he would go to Azerbaijan, and the people, when he went to Azerbaijan, would come to him, okay, and, like, in secret, ask him to teach them verses from the Quran. And that, that's like a very significant piece of personal information that corresponds to the way that, like, religion actually oftentimes transcends ideological movements. It's what you make of your religion that matters. And a lot of people use religion. A lot of nation states use religion as a weapon, as a tool, or they try to enforce secularism. And enforcing secularism is never good. It's not a good idea. I would go so far as to say that it wasn't a good idea even in Turkey. Okay, I grew up thinking that laïcité was a principle that I think is good, especially if it's enforced by a Muslim in a Muslim nation state. It's like enforced upon itself. And now I realize many, many years later that, like, no, those principles are part of the reason why Erdogan gained so much fucking prominence. Like, it's partially because there was a very real reason as to why so many fucking Muslim Turkish people that are like super fundamentalist or more fundamentalist than the average Turkish person, like, they gained so much prominence because they were able to successfully point the finger at Turkish laïcité and go, look, they're oppressing Muslims, because there is a specific form of oppression. The most loyal people to the USSR was the Muslims in Kazakhstan, by the way. Hakim states this in this video about the USSR's religious mistakes. I think it's a major mistake. Okay? See, this guy immediately fucking... My Kurdish chatters immediately. Wasn't Turkey doing the same thing 20 years ago with hijabs and stuff? Bitch, I'm getting there. Okay, calm down. Fucking calm down. Okay. Obviously, I'm not gonna bring up laïcité in France and not fucking talk about Turkey, another country that did it. Secularism is wrong because people use it in bad faith. No, secularism is different than laïcité. Laïcité is an enforcement of secularism, where it's not just. It's not necessarily just like a separation of church and state, which I obviously believe in as a principle and I think is a fucking great idea. And I hope that people understand that. I've never literally said anything outside of that. But instead, this is enforced secularism where it's like, oh, any kind of religious appearance in public will be criminally prosecutable. Like it goes beyond just like the state being neutral to religious religious expressions, and actually instead starts prosecuting any kind of religious expression in public. And oftentimes the religious expression in public is the one that they consider not to be compatible with whatever like the in-group is. It's like kind of reaction. It's very reactionary and sometimes even fascist. Is not good. How would you compare to the German denazification laws? That is an insane comparison to make. What? Religion goes infinitely beyond ideology in the way that people examine it, in the way that people utilize it in their lives and their personal development. That's so crazy. Nazism is not a fucking religion. What are you saying? It's an ideology. From my perspective, yes, religion is an ideology as well. It's just one backed by dogma. But I think that, I'm a little bit more considerate of those who are believers than you are. It's nuts. Also, ultimately, it is kind of odd. Yeah, anti-fascism calls for anti-fundamentalism. Being anti-religion entirely is just shooting socialist movements in the foot. It's another tool for fostering cohesion. Exactly. Religion is what you make of it. And it's ironic because, like, Christianity is a perfect example of this this thing that I mentioned regularly. It's just a tool, right? Because on the one hand, you had Christian white supremacists utilize the Bible to justify slavery by pointing to passages and their own false interpretation of it. And then you also, on the other hand, who were the most rigid, principled abolitionists, like fucking John Brown even, okay? Rest in power. Motherfucking liberation theologists. That's right. So, obviously, religion as a singular force for evil is greatly overstated. It's just simply a tool for social cohesion, social organizing. And I think it's always really weird whenever people just like fucking point the finger at religion to be like, it's just evil across the board. Like, yes, it's most primary expressions, especially when paired up with like some kind of state power, has oftentimes been for evil biddings. I agree. Okay, it's done a lot of evil shit. But ultimately, I think that secularism is a great thing. But in state-enforced secularism that like bans any kind of religious expression will always backfire. Okay? Always. Now, obviously, this community is like 70% atheist, so it's so fucking dumb to have this conversation because everyone fucking gets mad because we are united on this front, okay? But in reality, the rest of the world is far from that perspective. Most U.S. chatters are going to have their Reddit atheism based wholly in Christianity, which is something they need to fucking examine. Yeah. Anyway. In France, you know that they're not going after the Christians and Muslims equally with the shit too. That's the main problem. Of course, they never do that. Same with Quebec. Anywhere where there is strict state enforcement of laïcité, unless it's like literally a Muslim nation doing it against Islam, and even then it has issues, as I also mentioned in Turkey, which has a blowback effect, okay? But yes, in France and in other places where they're doing these kinds of strict measures, they oftentimes just, I don't know, don't really have the same level of smoke for Christian depictions. You know what I mean? Christianity. Ain't nobody's getting stopped in the fucking street for wearing a cross. You know what I mean? So, banning religious expression is not that far from forcing it on to people. Yeah, it's when anti-theists turn around and like try to proselytize or even like try to get vengeance, I guess. And it's odd because like I get where you're coming from. You despise religion, I understand it, but like not everyone has your same not everyone believes the same shit you do, right? Communism begins from the outset with atheism, but atheism is at first far from being communism. Indeed, that atheism is still mostly an abstraction. The philanthropy of atheism is therefore at first only philosophical, abstract philanthropy, and that of communism is at once real and directly bent on action. I know, and then it's the religion is the opium of the masses quote that everybody loves to use as well, but it's it doesn't matter. Religious suffering is, at one and the same time, the expression of real suffering and a protest against real suffering. Religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of a heartless world, and the soul of soulless conditions. It is the opium of the people. As in, people choose to breathe life into their meaningless existence as they are cogs in a machine, behaving in the way that they're supposed to in a productive output. And religion is what unites them. And the negative understanding of that, the negative interpretation of that is that religion dulls the senses. But of course, as somewhat of a revisionist, I also deviate on commodity fetishization in certain respects, because I do think that a very solid. These are Jay Electronica lyrics. No. That's so funny. That's such a funny take, man. Looking at Karl Marx's writings and being like, man, this is just what Jay Electronica said. That's awesome. There's atheism and anti-theism can be blurred but important to separate. Way too many claim the former but are really the latter. So, no, I know Jay Electronica has said some shit about Jews, but Chad are gonna be shocked when he finds out Carl was Jewish. Yeah, I don't know if you guys know this, but like a lot of what I know Marx has definitely been accused of anti-Semitism. You know what he's also been accused of? Instituting a Jewish New World Order. Like, I don't know if you guys know something, but like a lot of the Frankfurt School stuff that even still Republicans use now, I don't know if you guys know this, but like the entirety of the Marxist movement, whether it was Lenin or Marxist-Leninism or any kind of like Marxism, any kind of deviation away from like capitalism at the time, was declared Jewish purgatory. I don't know if you guys knew that, but like people saying, people being like, oh man, fucking, and it was also in many instances fought by a lot of Jews too. Like Nazis thought it was Judeo-Bolshevism, a Jewish plot to overthrow Western society. Marxism was most famously considered a Jewish thought and was criticized for being a Jewish thought, was regularly attacked for being led by Jews, and also was like the international Jewry's dedicated attempt to destroy and dismantle Western supremacy and Western civilization. Don't know if you knew that, but they still do that, by the way. But more quietly. Instead of saying cultural Bolshevism, they say cultural Marxism. Even Jordan Peterson says that. Also, if you wanna get a perspective on at least like the formation of the USSR, or rather, like Lenin's thoughts on anti-Semitism, is fucking goated. Definitely recommend. Lenin always. He had some very cool and very important prophetic thoughts on anti-Semitism. Lenin, I call him Lenin. The claim that Marx is anti-Semitic comes from his work on the Jewish question, in which he examines religion in relation to political emancipation. Secularization and the emancipation are not inherently opposed to Jewish thought, though. Yeah, there's nothing. I mean, that in and of itself is also very ahead of its time. They're mistaking the essay title on the Jewish question to mean something anti-Semitic rather than actually reading it. Oh. Well, he's not treated as anything in like the Western world because the Western world is completely oblivious. And the reason why I showed that Lenin video is because I'm sure plenty of people for the first time ever people literally heard a famous socialist leader talk about anti-Semitism as a bad thing because their modus operandi, the modus operandi of the capitalist is to lie all the fucking time and most likely think that like Marxism is anti-Semitic, like that one chatter was asking questions about.
We need to have comprehensive immigration reform so that we aren't constantly doing this patchwork policy extensions. That has not happened for decades. But additionally, I think we also need to examine the root of this problem, because if we are constantly engaging in foreign policy that drives people to our southern border. In this specific instance, U.S. sanctions that were originally authored by Marco Rubio began and precipitated, certainly took a large part in the driving of populations to our southern border. Shortly after those sanctions, those broad-based sanctions.
You're talking about Venezuela.
Yes, shortly after those.
Like, that's not a take you would hear from any American politician, let alone, she's not wrong. She's saying that sanctions on Venezuela has crippled the Venezuelan economy, and that has created a massive influx of refugees, economic migrants leaving Venezuela to come to the United States. And of course, you know, if you had like the opinion that like, oh man, this is a national security threat, which is not, in my opinion. But if you were to legitimately consider it to be a national security threat, then all you would do, all power to the Soviet state and revolution? Nah, they could have fought the war without going against socialism by destroying the Soviets, ignoring the result of an election they lost, suppressing any form of criticism. If it wasn't for Marxist-Leninists, we might very well have had worldwide communism at this point. The fact that there's still MLs in 2023 is cringe. Oh my God. She's literally talking about how American foreign policy on Venezuela is like causing American imperialism, is causing economic migrants. That is as clear cut as you can get. Wait, why do we impose sanctions on Venezuela and why not lift them by now? What do you mean? Why would we not do that? Under the Chavez revolution, regime, whatever you want to call it, Venezuela engaged in a very big no-no, in an act of autonomy that is very inconsiderate to the needs of foreign capital. Okay? Administration. Yes, Chavez administration. Now, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't be a massively important oil refinery that foreign capital is taking advantage of in a way that is not so dissimilar to what happened in Iran under Mossadegh, or at least attempted to originally under Mossadegh. So when that kind of thing happens, okay, obviously there is a level of violence in that nationalization that will occur. It's never going to be done fully peacefully. Some people will get arrested. Some people will go to jail. Certainly that occurred in Venezuela as well. And of course, capitalist perfectionists who took advantage of the previous formation will use that as a we'll use that as a reason as to why a coup must happen. And, it did. It was unsuccessful, or rather, it was short-lived, but it did happen. America has since then done everything in its power to utilize the Chamber of Commerce, which facilitated the original coup against Chavez, who was very popular. So popular that the coup fucking failed. America has tried to put the hurt into Venezuela as best as it possibly can, completely shutting it out. Completely shutting it out of the global market. And while simultaneously the Chamber of Commerce inside of Venezuela, which has an interest against the Venezuelan population, for the record, the billionaires in the food agricultural side and the grocery store owners that routinely worked against diversification in Venezuela, and Chavez was not quick enough to be able to fully diversify its and focus on its agricultural output. And then once the oil faucet was shut off, boom, blam, thank you, ma'am. The Venezuelan economy took a massive nosedive that it has yet to recover from. Now, there's also the other side of the not dissimilar to Lenin, Stalin, but there's also the other side of the issue, which was that I would say Maduro is not a very good leader and is kind of resting on the laurels of Chavistas in positions of power still, and Chavez's popularity, because the reality is that once you implement certain socialization and implement social reforms, once you actually start developing certain aspects of the country, especially the previously underserved populations, they get like roads, schools, hospitals, improve the literacy rate, things like that. It's very hard. It's very hard to have people hate you after that. So sometimes you can end up continuing that government or that formation with like a guy who's not as good. Now, ultimately, I would say that the larger problem here is certainly that Lenin speech sent me on a search of books on him and socialism that ran into Deville and Karl Marx. Looks wacky and some anti-socialism propaganda. You have any thoughts? Ever heard of it? I don't know. Just if you ever find someone who's like a rugged anti-communist, anti-socialist, just Google their name and like look up, I don't know, nationalism or something. Like Google their name with some keywords and you will find out what their genuine perspective is. Okay. It's the same as people who shit on me on Twitter. If you keyword search like lolly, you will see them defend lolly 100% of the time. There's never been a fucking deviation from that standard. Anyone that shits on me on fucking Twitter, they've defended lolly on the timeline or like talked about the age of consent laws being arbitrary or whatever the fuck. Okay. Always doesn't matter what their like supposed ideology is that they're like presenting to the rest of the world. It's always the same shit. And you can do the same. It's a very similar principle to people who are like rugged anti-socialists. You will always, lolly is not banned on Twitter, by the way. Wait, really? If you find someone who is like a rugged anti-socialist, a rigid anti-socialist, you will always find that they have a secondary reason for why they hate it.
broad-based sanctions were enacted, we started seeing dramatic increases in these populations that were coming to our southern border. And so we have to address the root of these population movements and the migration crisis. And we also have to address the domestic U.S. policy issues when it comes to immigration reform.
But the Maduro government has also...
That's not accurate. The crisis that Maduro faces due to the fact that the wave of attempt of coups was done under him, plus the Chavez mistake of being heavily dependent on oil export. Wait, Maduro faces way more challenges of crisis than Chavez. I agree with that. However, I also literally mentioned that. I said Chavez attempted to diversify its industries and failed to do so due to the major power holders in Venezuela being entirely still against them, despite the fact that he was able to successfully nationalize its oil. Okay, so as far as the Chavez issues goes, I already mentioned that. No, he did not, Hasan. What do you mean he did not? Okay. Anyway, what the fuck are we doing? How do we get to Venezuela and the Venezuelan economy like this? What is happening here? Oh, we were talking about the things that AOC was saying, which she's absolutely correct on. I think that it certainly plays a role when you can't actually do trade with the rest of the world, or at least like you're very restricted.
Been responsible for large parts of that.
Absolutely.
Are you saying that you want the Biden administration to pull back pressure on him?
I think we need to re-examine the...
Like, what a stupid fucking counter. She said sanctions are cruel and unusual and are the reason why a lot of people suffer from economic destitution and want to come to America as economic migrants. She goes, well, what about Maduro? Like, should we not sanction? Well, I mean, what about his bad behavior? It's like, the fuck do you mean? Like, who the fuck are you?
Nature of these sanctions. There are sanctions that are very specific. For example, the Magnitsky Act sanctions that do actually focus on the decision makers and people who may be violating norms, practices, civil rights, but broad-based sanctions that punish the overall economy and harm everyday working people that are driving them into the economic and political destitution that force millions of people, both not just to the United States, but even to our regional partners.
Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey, as you know, has just been...
Yeah, I love when people fucking bring up sanctions on, like, individuals. And they're like, well, what about these despotic dictators? And it's like, bro, MBS literally just did an all-English interview on fucking Fox News, okay? Suck my dick. What about the fucking sanctions? Like, what are you talking about?
Indicted on bribery charges. Should he resign? And what do you think of his statement that it has to do with him being a Latino?
Well, I think the situation is quite unfortunate, but I do believe that it is in the best interests for Senator Menendez to resign in this moment. As you mentioned, consistency matters.
Please ban me because I love the Chinese economy and I want them to overtake the U.S. I love politics. Why are you so against this? The sanctions are for the best.
It shouldn't matter whether it's a Republican or a Democrat. The details in this indictment are extremely serious. They involve the nature of not just his, but all of our seats in Congress. And while, as a Latina, there are absolutely ways in which there is systemic bias, but I think what is here in this indictment is quite clear. And I believe it is in the best interest to maintain.
That's what Bob Menendez should have done. He should have said, I'm Latino. And then they would have been like, sorry, my bad.
The integrity of the seat. I want to emphasize that all people they must be extended the presumption of innocence until proven guilty.
Some Republican members like Matt Gaetz have threatened to try to oust Speaker McCarthy.
I love that fucking Bob Menendez said he's Latino and that's why they're coming after him. It's so funny. It's just so good. You can't even fucking... First of all, you're a white Cuban guy. You are like so firmly in the white category that you're just white. Like, there's probably never been a census fucking, a census where he hasn't checked the white box. You know what I mean? It's like white Hispanics in America are now firmly within the white category. They make up the 66% white, right? The 66% white percentage of the population.
He,
I love it. It's awesome.
Vacate. Would you vote with him as a Democrat to get to 218 to oust Speaker McCarthy?
I mean, I think that we would have to cross that bridge when we get to it. Speaker McCarthy has been very weak. I think that he has also engaged in just absolutely terrible decision making for the American people, from continuing to try to cement denying the right to an abortion among women, to the denial of to policy that denies the reality of climate change, to basic fiscal irresponsibility and recklessness. We are at the brink of a shutdown right now. And so,
oh God, I hate the shutdown. I hate the shutdown shit because it's like so stupid. It's so made up. I guess it's all like the shutdown stuff is so bad. Obviously, like Republicans are very stupid